Senator from Virginia.
Mr. President, I've come to speak on a different topic, but I want to commend my friend, the Senator from Illinois, for his comments. I agree with him. Just yesterday, my colleague and dear friend, Senator Kaine, and I met with 4 of the families who were part of one of that litany of shootings in Virginia Beach, where a mentally deranged individual came in and brutally murdered 12, mostly city employees. A few folks who were there to try to get city services. And the anguish, pain, and hurt of these 4 families, 4 years after the fact, reflect that the kind of anguish and hurt that the families in Nashville are feeling, and so many countless others. And I commend the senator and, again, agree that it is incumbent upon us to do our job. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. And thank him for his comments. But, Mr. President, I come to the floor this morning where, after 2 weeks of consideration and debate, and I've not been part of all that debate, I would like to say I had been, because then I could use an excuse of why my voice sounds so crummy this morning. But after 2 weeks of debate and literally the way the Senate used to function, a whole host of amendments, the Senate shortly is poised to take a truly notable action, voting to repeal not 1, but 2 authorizations for use of military force. Finally, taking these outdated authorizations, dating all the way back to 2002, and the previous one back to 1991, off the books. This is an important step for Congress in reclaiming its constitutional duties with regard to authorizing the use of U.S. forces in combat. I want to give credit to the Biden administration for supporting this repeal, and to the bipartisan majority in Congress who have brought this measure to the brink of passage here in the Senate. As we come to the floor getting ready to take this vote, we would not have gotten here, I can assure you, without the steadfast leadership of Senator Kaine and Senator Young. These 2 have been partners on this effort since 2019. For Senator Young, given his service as a Marine in the decade right in the middle of these 2 authorizations, I know that this fight is personal for him, and I appreciate his tireless work on this. And starting off on that fight, it was a little more challenging, perhaps on his side of the aisle. But he has been relentless. He is, through the power of his passion and conviction, convinced a number of his colleagues to join this event. And this will go down, I believe, as one of Senator Young's most significant accomplishments, accomplishments that I've worked with him as well on, for example, the CHIPS bill last year and the science bill, where he also provided enormous leadership, and I thank him for that. But I would be remiss here today if I didn't spend the balance of my 2 or 3 minutes on the efforts of my great friend of 43+ years, Tim Kaine, who I think we would all agree, if without his efforts, we wouldn't be here today. For the decade, or a little more than the decade, that Senator Kaine has served in this changer, he has been the leading voice, and a lot of times the only voice, much to the chagrin sometimes of folks in my party, much to the chagrin sometimes of the Obama administration, in working to push this Senate to live up to its constitutional duty. That duty, which is candidly one of the most solemn ones we have, which is the exercise of the power to declare war and ultimately to commit our young men and women, fellow Americans, into combat. Now, this is also very personal to Tim. We both have the honor of representing the state that has probably the highest concentration of military and veterans of any state in the country. Tim also brings the experience of being a father of a Marine. I remember watching Nat grow up. Our families have been friends. And when he chose to go into the Marines, I don't think we were surprised. But the way he distinguished himself in that duty, serving abroad, deployments to Africa, elsewhere, then serving back here in this country, you could always tell how proud Tim and Ann felt about Nat's service, but you could also feel the extra burden of responsibility he felt to make sure what he owed not only to Nat, but what he owed to literally every young American who served in our military. So, this has been something that this push has really been the kind of one of the guiding principles that has directed Tim throughout his whole career in the Senate. I think back to initially him raising these issues in the Foreign Relations Committee back in 2013, saying it was time for Congress not to simply take a passive role or be a Monday morning quarterback, or more likely a Sunday morning quarterback on the news shows, about our constitutional responsibility in weighing in on conflicts that were taking place around the world that went well beyond the original authorizations of these AUMFs. He constantly would try to bring up this issue. Again, many times being the only voice, and I know how much he respected President Obama, many times going against the position of the Obama administration. Now, other folks might have at some point, whether it was Democratic leadership or the White House or his fellow members, said, you know, this really, can't you get off this? This makes us all feel a little uncomfortable. And my friend Tim Kaine, and it's hard to work with him. We are a great partner. I'm the glass three-quarters empty guy. He's the glass overfilling with confidence and hope guy. But even that constant hope and belief, there had to be times during this decade of fighting on this when he had to have lost a little bit of faith. Could this actually get done? But that relentless optimism, that belief based in his faith, that if you keep on something, that people will ultimately do the right thing. And at the end of the day, that dogged determination, all that has come about in this last 2 weeks is a testament to that kind of hard work. I've watched it at times when he kept, year after year, kind of banging his head against the wall. And again, there were a lot of us. Sometimes even I felt this way. Well, you know, maybe we should do it next year. Maybe this is not the right time. Maybe there's some other reason where, you know, this can wait a little while. It's not on the front of mind. But for Tim Kaine, it was always front of mind. Working now with our friend Todd Young, but his prior partners. Great senators who I had the opportunity to work with, Bob Corker and Jeff Flake. He has been just relentless. And this kind of profile in courage, profile in doing the right thing, is a great testament to the people of Virginia and, frankly, to the people in our nation, that this senator keeps his eye on the ball. Now, I told Senator Kaine I might want to make these comments. He said, but Mark, we're not at the finish line. We still got to get it through the House. Well, I think you're going to have a remarkable vote in a few minutes due to the work of Senator Young and Senator Kaine. And that overwhelming majority that's going to be posted here today, I think will propel this action in the House. And I'm very glad to see that the Speaker of the House has indicated that he will bring this legislation up. There are more debates to be had and more votes to wrestle down and more amendments when it gets to the House. But at the end of the day, this bill is going to become the law of the land. Congress is going to take back its constitutional responsibility over the power to declare war and to put our troops in harm's way. It wouldn't have happened without the great work of Senator Todd Young. But this debate wouldn't even have been still alive, still vibrant, still forcing us to do our job without the relentless, tireless work of a great public servant, a great Virginian, a great American, my friend Tim Kaine. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.